All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the August 16th board meeting. Please rise and join me for a pledge of allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Leonard's you're on the phone, correct?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening. Dr. Diller?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Great, thank you. And we have everybody else here except for having a moment. Joan is out. And Lance had something unexpected come up that he texted me about an hour and a half ago that wasn't sure if he'd make it, and it looks like he won't. Okay, 103, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, do a voice vote. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, passes. 2.01, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion, corrections, et cetera, for the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, minutes are approved. For 3.01 President's Report, I'm actually going to defer. I know Mr. Widman's going to be talking about construction at his, in the Acting Superintendent's Report, and Mr. Norcross will take it and talk for a few moments on the Superintendent Search.
Go ahead, you go first.
Oh, he's next on the agenda, so you're up.
I'm next.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're up.
All right, thank you, Dr. Short. Thank you, Dr. Short. Just a brief overview for the public on where the board and district, where we are with the superintendent search. But before I go into that, I just want to take one moment. I was unable to attend the meeting in, when was it, July meeting? End of June, the end of June meeting.
Right.
When we appointed Kurt as assistant superintendent. I've lost track of time here the past month, but anyway, I was unable to attend that, but I just want to take one thing while I had the mic here right now. I fully support, I feel that with Kurt and Mark, we are more than, I'm more than comfortable with leading this district until we make our final selection. I was unable to attend that meeting and could not vote, but I just wanted to make my public comment in support of that decision. So where we're going forward with this, we're going to have a couple focus group meetings that we're still working out the details on. We're looking to advertise for the position sometime in the late fall. Again, this is all in its infancy. You know, we've been down this track for about a little over a month now. Looking to advertise in late fall, have resumes back from any interested candidates prior to Christmas, and get those resumes into the hands of board members to begin to review. That'll be our the board members' homework assignment over Christmas break, if you will. And then as we start in, we'll work on deciding the first tier. And actually, we'll work on coming up with the first tier, looking to do that probably with just board executive session through checking references and our individual resume reviews, and probably some hearty discussion with full board members to come up with those candidates who we'd like to bring in for a first round of interviews. And then we will repeat that process after the first round of interviews to come up with candidates for a second round of interviews, unless we just end up feeling we have some, unless we can conclude it after round one. The ultimate goal is at our March, is it the 28th or 23rd? I didn't get my numbers written down. The board meeting at the end of March is the goal that we would have a board vote on the next superintendent. That's a generic timeline. If you give us a month or two, I'll be more than happy to give a monthly update if we feel it's necessary. Thank you.
Did you have a question?
And clarify that Tuesday is the 28th, March.
Thank you, Ben.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Woodman.
Okay, I have several items for the superintendent's report. The first on event preparedness. I want to thank Gary Carter and his police department. Mark, Tammy, and I attended a event preparedness workshop that he ran with local entities. We had the Franklin County Emergency Management, our entire police department, the Chambersburg Borough Police Department, Pennsylvania State Police, and several officers from there, the Sheriff's Department, and Sean Corwell from Green Township, and it was an excellent meeting that Gary ran for our district just for to prepare. Mark, Tammy, and I also attended the Franklin County Education Summit. They discussed some grant winners in the county, and we heard from a panel of 3 school districts. Chambersburg was included. Brad Ocker and represented Chambersburg with Amanda Highball from JLG and a Cassius student on how their partnership works. We have over 20 senior students this year that are going to work at JLG during the school year and during the school. This is an excellent partnership, and we're looking to continue that with JLG and many other manufacturers in the area. Construction update. We have 4 elementary schools that were being renovated, HVAC, all new tile flooring in all the classrooms, ceilings, all new windows. I visited all 4 schools each week the last 4 weeks, and there's visible progress, has been great since my last visit. Last week there were hardly any floors being tiled. Last Friday we were probably at 80%. We're probably near 100% right now. They've been working weekends, so everything is near completion. But we're very happy with the amazing amount of progress that's been made, especially in the last 7 days. I do want to say to our faculty in those buildings and principals and staff that we know it's a hardship not being able to be in there until Monday, the first day of teachers coming back. You know, we have teachers itching to get in over the weekend, but with us moving everything back in and buildings and grounds getting the building ready cleaning wise and waxing floors, we have to hold off until Monday. We do apologize for that, but we did an amazing amount of work in 4 buildings this year, and we were able to use the ESSER funds, and those buildings are going to be like walking into a new building with all the walls being painted, new floors, new ceilings, a new HVAC system, and new windows. So thank you, Ed, for all the work that B&G has done with the contractors on that. CSD Foundation Board, I'm sure you'll get a report tonight, but Mark and I attended the Foundation Board retreat on August 11th. Angie asked me to give a 15-minute discussion about the CSD State of the Union for all the members, and Mark and I both participated in that, and we're very pleased with the board members' investment in our students and staff. Opening day, just a reminder for all the board members, is August 22nd. We will have seats saved for you in the front row of the auditorium, and that starts at 8 o'clock. Priority list will be presented at the Finance B&G Committee meeting. I know Mr. Leonards was talking to Tammy about that, and Tammy will be hearing from the chairs tonight to get that date on our board docs. We are looking at, with the elimination, we have elimination of two Act 93 department positions within Pupil Services tonight on the personnel report. We are looking at a social services director, combining a lot of the work of those two positions, and we want to present that at the September CAL meeting. There'll be highlights of that in the board report at the end of the week. And just two more items. Summary of PD. Over the summer, we had over 300 teachers and administrators receive the ELA resource training K-12. For Eureka, we had over 50 folks. We had 50 teachers and plus a lot of administrators that were K-8. Now Eureka is our math resource that's K-8. And we had over 50 teachers attend the Eureka Math refresher training. We also had several special ed trainings this summer and a QBS training, which is de-escalation techniques and restraint training for our emotional support classrooms and behavior classrooms. And finally, the ELA resources are coming in at a very rapid rate, literally thousands of boxes. So thank you for approving that purchase for all of our teachers. It is a massive undertaking to verify and distribute. And we have about 200 CAVE students that are coming back to brick and mortar. And with a slight increase in our enrollment, we will be ordering additional resources, but we need to see where we stand at all the buildings. And our principals are diligently filling out the pages as they come in, about the resources, what they received, making sure it matches, and then looking at our enrollment figures. So we'll be coming to the September board meeting with needing to order some more resources, but we'll get that number to you. The biggest thing was about 200 CAVE students coming back to brick and mortar schools, which is a great thing. And that ends my report.
Lots packed, that's why I didn't say much. That's all right, and better that it comes from you. All right, thank you. 4.1, members of the audience invited to comment on agenda items. I'll read out your name and address and the item that you're going to speak on in this part for the items on the agenda. Reminder to keep your comments to 3 minutes. First is John Jordan of 2812 Redden Lane in Fayetteville.
Yeah, I actually want to have been talking the last few meetings about the personnel issues. Since the new board took over, the best I can tell is we've had 106 resignations, and it looks like we've, as of tonight, maybe we've refilled back 85 of them. So that is, I guess, some progress, but it's an awful lot. I've been struggling with the fact that we have all these resignations, and I've been talking about this in the last couple meetings. And one of the things is I kind of think we have a morale issue with not only the teachers but everybody. And I'll tell you some of the things that I've been thinking about or looking at that. One of them is we have teachers that put in for their travel pay and stuff, and it looks like they don't get paid sometimes. I see one from last year. They don't get paid for months and months afterwards. That's a morale issue in my mind. We also have vendors like coaches and stuff, not coaches, but referees and stuff who I've talked to that said they don't get paid for 3 or 4 months after the event. And they said, or told me, that Chambersburg has always done that. That they're notorious for that. So that's a morale issue. And I also see that we have other vendors that we don't pay for 3 or 4 months after they've been there. You have a bill come up, they don't pay them for 2 or 3 months. I'm sure if anybody up there has a business, when you do something, you want to get paid the next month. You don't want to wait 3 or 4 months. So with all the money that I guess Ms. Stauffer takes care of, we can't pay our people or pay these bills on time. Another part of a morale issue. I spoke last week about the stipend jobs. I missed that stipend part, so somebody over there corrected me about the head nurse and a couple jobs. I believe that Mr. Raber had said when you did away with a job, an administrative job, several months ago, I think that person took care of all of those different jobs. He had some concern, I think it was, that that wasn't going to work out. So now we've decided to dump more work for $10,000 or what on 3 people to let them take over his job. They'll probably have plenty of work all to do anyway. Now they're going to get added onto that. And Ms. Gogler said that she likes the idea of a head nurse. And I think that in a hospital position, it's a wonderful idea, but I'm very concerned in a school situation that we're not taking one of our nurses and giving her $10,000 more and making her and 2 other people have a lot more work for $10,000. And we maybe saved money when we did away with that other job, but I don't know whether that was to our advantage. So I guess that takes care of that thing. And I had a couple notes here, so
Okay, please wrap up.
I'm done.
Your time expired. but-
Okay, well, I got a couple more things that I'll talk to in the second public comment.
Okay, thank you. Next individual is Valerie Jordan, 6812 Redden Lane, on item 628 on the agenda.
I'm going to add a couple things just to that. When you go out for the superintendent's job, it needs to be posted on your website. We've gotten emails about that from me. That's the law. Parents should be on the committee, and I'd like to come in and read. Oh. I'd like to come in and read all the resumes. I'd like to read them because they're public documents. I want to know we're hiring the best superintendent for the district. Because parents should be on the committee when the selection process goes out. Bear that in mind. The superintendent needs knowledge in grant writing. I got very concerned when I heard we need to hire a grant writer. No. I went in and you saw what I found, how much Dr. Betts brought in. I was shocked. Now he's gone. My neighbor says maybe we should have hired him as the grant writer, but my husband reminded me of something. You can't do that. It would be against the law. He could sue us, and he'd be rightfully in his right mind to do that. I did send him a note, and I did wish him touche. The new stipend positions. I want to know who those people are. I have a right to know, and I don't need to put it in a right to know. I did. You know what I did. And I haven't acted on it yet. But you have a very weak paper trail. Very weak. And I don't want to have to do what I just don't want to do it. Tonight I'm glad you're acknowledging some of what I've been bringing up, like disclosing names and salaries and all that. You've broken the Sunshine Law. And I'm not saying you, Mr. Whitman, but the group. And don't look at me strange, Mark, because you did. And I've had people tell me that. So I guess that's it for now. Personnel actions, there's quite a few again tonight. I don't want to see teachers resigning here. I don't. And I want classroom sizes smaller. And schools not closing. And schools added on to. Because my $34 can afford that. And tomorrow you're going to see my new neighbor's house that's going up. And you're going to get another $5,000 or $6,000 from that house next year. I also, one more thing, I never want to hear in a public meeting again, unique field trip. It's not costing the taxpayers any money. These kids deserve something from us. I don't want to hear, because that sounds to me like you're squeaking when you do that. You're cheap. So please don't do that ever again. It insults me. It's not costing the taxpayers any money. But yet I walk in this fancy boardroom where my boardroom was just a media center, okay?
Okay, please wrap up.
And there's hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting here in salaries. And someone here has to say, it's not costing the taxpayers any money. I don't want to be insulted anymore. And I'm for the kids. I've always been for the kids. My husband has always been for kids. So
Okay, please
he
wrap
told
up.
me
Thank you.
try not to get emotional. So I tried to keep, I wasn't prepared with a script because honestly I forgot the meeting was tonight. I dragged
Okay.
him out of the house to come
Mr.
here.
Jordan, you've gone way
Thank
over
you.
time. Thank you. Okay, and that's all that I have on the attendance sheet that had comments. All right, 5.01, federal programs presentation. Mr. Whitman, you want to tee it up?
Yes. Sure. At our last, well, actually 2 CI&T meetings, or Curriculum Instruction and Technology Committee meeting, Lindsay gave a presentation on our title programs, or how our federal dollars are spent through Title I, II, III, and IV. Our committee of 4 board members really liked the presentation, and they asked that Lindsay Breslin come in and give the presentation to the entire board and to our community listening. So, Lindsay, take it away.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I will say, when I gave this at CI&T, it was about an hour and a half long. Kurt said 10 to 15 minutes. So this will be quicker. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. My name is Lindsay Breslin. I am a curriculum and instruction supervisor. I have been the federal programs coordinator for the last 3 years. Before that, I was just working as the Title I supervisor. And this is the beginning of my 16th year for the district. So I wanted to give you an overview of our federal funds, because each of the title funds has a different function and can be spent in different ways. And just like with any federal money, there are specific requirements and paperwork that has to be followed with that. So I won't bore you with paperwork, but I will tell you how what each of the dollars can spend, and then what we as a district spend, just to give you an idea. All right, Scott, you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so to start, let's talk about Title I, because Title I is our largest pot that comes into our district. Title I funding is specific to the buildings that receive Title I funding, which in our district this year for 22-23 are our 13 elementary schools. Last year it was our middle schools as well, but due to a loss of funding, which we'll talk about later, we are just targeting our 13 elementary buildings. The Title I funding specifically is for improving academic success for our students and helping our families help our students at home. So this money, in my mind, is extremely powerful because of what it can do, not just for the kids within our schools, but how we can help their families. And Title I, in its purest form, is supposed to sit on top of what our district already provides. So I look at Title I as an enhancement of what we as a district already say that we stand for. So in Chambersburg, what we use our Title I dollars for, and you'll see it later in the presentation too, or maybe you've already looked at it, a lot of our federal money is tied up in salaries of some really incredible positions. So for us, for Title I, we use most of our Title I funding to fund the Title I instructional specialists. We also have 4 aides and 3 additional teaching staff. We also have to shave a portion of that money right off the bat into a parent and family engagement fund that goes to all of the Title I buildings based on the number of students that they have there. And then we use anything that's left for books or other resources that is designed to offer supplemental instruction in our classrooms. So that's the Title I pot. You can go to the next slide then, Scott. So Title II has its own requirements. Title II funding is unique in that it provides, quite different functions. So for Title II, you're using Title II funding to offer financial assistance to increase student academic achievement. So you can do that through improving the skills of the teachers and the principals, or increasing the quality of instruction in core academic subjects. So for us at Chambersburg, what we use ours for are class size reduction teachers at Stevens and Ben Chambers, which are our two highest poverty buildings. And then we also use a portion of our Title II funding for professional development. Last year, we used a lot of that money for Collins writing, data analysis training, phonics first training, math intervention, just to name a few things. We tried to train a lot of our staff, and that funding can be spread out on all staff. So that's how we use Title II now. And please stop me if you have any questions. Again, this was an hour and a half before, so I don't want to skip over something you might want to know. Scott, you can go to the next slide then for me. Thank you. Title III. So Title III funding, which you'll see later, is a funding stream that holds pretty steady for us. Title III funding is concentrated on delivering language instruction, educational programs to students who have a primary language other than English, which in this district is 1 in 4 of our students. So we have two, and I can't champion them enough. With this money, with our Title III money, we paid 2 really incredible individuals who function as our parent and family liaisons. I wish we had 30 of them. I wish we had 40 of them. They're really great. We have 2 wonderful women that are our parent and family liaisons. They work with our families on top of, they do it all for them. For our families that have the barrier of not understanding the language, they do special kindergarten registration nights to help those families. They call those families, advocate for those families, bring them resources. And on top of that, they also come to a lot of our Title I events that we bring into our schools to translate for us, for families that don't understand what we're saying when we only speak in English. And we also have them do they translate a lot of our documents, which in Title, there are a lot of documents, and they do a lot of great work. So again, I'd take 40 of them if we could.
They helped out our parents today at Cam South, new student orientation, and they'll do Camps North on Thursday.
They're just everywhere we need them to be.
You said 1 in 4 in our district. What's, I think, of the 25%, what's the largest? I would imagine Spanish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Roughly what percent of the 25? Is it like
I'm not
40% or any?
It's definitely the predominant language. I'm not sure what the percentage of the percentage.
I was just curious, like how big of a percent that was, and what are the total number of languages? I know you're diving for it. 28 different languages.
Yeah.
That's very interesting for our small rural community.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think I said this in the presentation. I grew up here. I went through school here. The Chambersburg that I remember as a child is very different than the Chambersburg now. It's very vibrant and exciting and new and different now, but it's definitely, we're definitely stepping in the right direction to have folks like this to help our families as our landscape changes here. We also use this Title III funding for materials and supplies for parent and family events that our ESL teachers put on, or even just Title I events that we can kind of tag along with. And then we use this money also for professional development and resources to help our staff learn more about addressing the needs of our ELL population in the district. All right, Scott, you can go to Title IV. And Title IV is the basket that just has a little bit of everything. So Title IV funding has no limit. You don't have to, I shouldn't say no limit. What I mean is Title IV funding can be spent across all of the buildings regardless of whether or not they are Title I. And Title IV funding must fall under one of 3 categories: well-rounded educational opportunities, safe and healthy students, and the effective use of technology. So everything we choose to buy out of Title IV, for whatever building we choose to buy it for, has to fit into one of those categories. So I wanted to share a little bit about how we spend those. If you can go to the next one, Scott. Thank you. So the first one is well-rounded educational opportunities. We have a really incredible K-12 Career Readiness Coordinator. This position has been around for probably, let's say, 3 years. I think it was 3 summers ago we wrote this job description. Our K-12 Career Readiness Coordinator supports all of our K-12 students and staff to help them with the career readiness PA standards that have been released. Not only does she manage the reporting of the artifacts to the state which has to be done at the end of 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. But just in the last year, we've finally been able to move into phase 2 of this position, which is connecting with businesses and organizations in the community to provide more opportunities for hands-on learning and experiences for our students. This is a really exciting moment for this position because I feel like we're finally getting to the meat and potatoes of what we always dreamed it would be. But we classify this job underneath the well-rounded educational opportunities. Scott, if you could go to the next one. So then the last 2 categories. For safe and healthy students, we use a portion of this to purchase security or purchases that strengthen security at our buildings. In the past, this has been radios. This is our Raptor system. And then additionally, we have just a little bit left this year to continue to support PBIS programs that support students at all of our K-8 buildings for safe and healthy students. And then this year, for our effective use of technology piece, we are purchasing the program Zello, which goes hand in hand with our Career Readiness Coordinator. Zello is our online management software program that can be used to meet our career readiness standards, and we use that across all of our buildings. So that's how we have spent our grant. Scott, if you'd go to the next slide, please. So in June, when they released the allocations for 22-23, I contacted Mr. Widman and said, oh man, because our projections that I thought we were going to get, we did not. And we ended up in all of our title streams, which was not projected, we ended up losing, all told, $318,000. So that was not something we were expecting, but it was also something not unique to Chambersburg. A lot of schools lost money in their allocations this year. So where it hurt us, like I told you at the beginning, a lot of our money is tied up in salaries. So that is a very uncomfortable spot to be in, and there were a lot of big conversations this summer. So I just want to give you that picture as we move into phase 2 of this presentation to kind of show you where we're going now. So Scott, if you would go to the next slide. So how are we moving forward to make maximum impact this school year? Go ahead and go to the next one. So I wanted to specifically address staffing. So we are recognizing that one of the best resources we can buy for our students, regardless of program or book or software, is the people that we're able to provide them. I've told you, we have 14 incredible instructional specialists that are working across 13 elementary buildings. These folks are going to be extremely critical this year as we are implementing a new ELA resource, K-12. They are going to be they're just going to be critical to helping our classroom teachers feel supported, helping our students feel successful. In addition to that, we also pay for 3 teachers. We have an ESL teacher and 2 classroom teachers out of this funding. And then, as I said before, we have 4 really amazing Title I aides as well. This year, we were a little creative in our funding, and we also were able to pay for an Ela Coordinator. This person will be somebody whose main focus is going to be across the buildings in assisting with professional development for our teachers regarding this new resource. In Title II, we'll be paying for class size reduction teachers. We have 2 still in that stream. Scott, if you'll go to the next one. We have in Title III, we have our 2 amazing student-parent liaisons. In Title IV, you have your Career Readiness Coordinator that I already spoke about. And then in addition to all of this, you have 75% of me, and you have 50% of an educational programming secretary who spends 50% of her time also on federal programs, all that fun paperwork, tracking, documenting. So that's the staff that we pay out of the grants. And now comes the part that I'm going to plead with the board with a little bit. If you could go to the next slide, Scott. Oh, not this part. I'm not going to plead with you yet. Let me tell you this first. So this is all of the educational software that we were able to hold on to this school year and pay for out of the grant for our teachers and students. We looked at usage across the district, and we also looked at, we listened to the teachers. Unfortunately, as we came off a pandemic and we had computers that we had never had in our classrooms before, we ended up spending a lot of money on programs, and because our teachers needed things, and when they came to us, they asked, and we gave it to them. Unfortunately, there just is no budget that sustains something like that, and you can see when we lost $300,000, there were some decisions that we had to make. We looked at a lot of programs and made sure that if there were programs that were doing the same function, then we had to look at which one was used the most and requested the most, and we went with that. So these are just a smattering of some of the critical programs that we were able to hang on to in our grant this year. And now is the part that I will plead a little bit. Scott, could you go to the next one? So for 23-24, looking ahead, because you can never sit still in federal programs. Just when you think you get the application written and you can breathe again and like, oh my gosh, that crazy month where you're writing the application is finished, no, then you just start tracking again. So there really is never any stopping in the funding. You all know that. There's never a time to breathe. So for 23-24, our current Title I funding, let me give just a little bit of history. When we had the pandemic, there were a lot of events and a lot of things that didn't happen. We had a lot of carryover money that we were allowed to apply for waivers to carry into grants for 2 years because of the fact that life wasn't happening as normally, and events weren't happening, and just those things weren't normal. So we were able to carry a lot more than we are normally allowed to carry. Normally, we're only allowed to carry 15% of our funds over. However, this year, we are able to hold on to the staff that I told you about because of the extreme carryover that we have. If we spread that out over the year, we're going to be just fine, which is what I plan on doing, but we will not have as much to carry us into 23-24. And looking into the future, 3 positions that are currently in our stream have to come out into the general fund. I just don't have the funding to hold them in the grant. And if the grant continues the way it did, in that it lost. I really hope it doesn't, but if it does, we really need to consider pulling these folks out and moving them into the stream, into the general fund. Same for those software programs. We were able to get a lot of them this year because of what we had left in the funding that needed to be spent and needed to be utilized, and our teachers will get to utilize the software for another year. But after that, as we look further ahead, there will be even more critical conversations about what really stays and what doesn't. I don't want to end on a completely bad note. I just want to make sure we're thinking ahead as we start planning across the years of what must change and staffing positions we must have. And that's one that I just want to make sure is brought to the top of your, the top of your inbox. I love doing what I do. I love that this money can affect so many of the families in our district. I lose sleep at night knowing that it can't affect everybody that I want it to. I never feel like I get to innovate as much as I want because you're just trying to do so many things. But like I said before, I want to sing the praises of the staff that are working in this grant. They're an incredible staff, and writing these applications, going through these federal guidelines, at things that constantly change, constantly update. Bobby would know these change all the time. I'm thankful for the staff that I have who are constantly adapting and changing too. So that's was it 15 minutes? Did anybody time me? Did I go a little longer? Wasn't an hour and a half.
No, I think
Okay.
that was great. Mr. Norcross, you had a question first.
Scott, can you go back to slide 8, please? That's a lot, Lindsay. Thanks for your
Sure.
going through that so quickly. But
Sure.
So on slide 8, you said it was June. We realized it was 300,000 less. Your original budget, had you planned on it being equal to last year, or so this came after the board had approved the budget, or darn near?
They usually well, in the past, the allocation, we usually have a good idea of what our allocation will be in about April or May. It's been getting later and later each year since COVID hit. I think we found out, I want to say the beginning of June, maybe towards I can't remember when. I just remember checking and checking and checking. I never count on money with this grant because I never know what to expect. However, when we did meet as a federal programs group across the state, what our state folks were telling us was that the Title I funding was going to increase, 2 was going to go down, 4 would definitely go up, and 3 would hold steady. 3 holding steady was about the closest. I mean, $985 in a $171,000 pot is not, that held steady. I was not expecting the deeper losses. So I knew that we would have to go through our programs after the buying that we had done in the past, but I didn't realize we'd lose that much.
So you were anticipating
I don't want to say it's
similar to 21, 22? In your
Yes.
budget. When you presented the budget for your department or put it together, you were
pretty
assuming-
close.
Okay, that was your basis.
I had in my mind what would need to come out when I thought Title II was going to shrink. In my mind, I knew what I would take out. I just didn't know it'd be everywhere.
Well, thank you. And then, so thank you, Lindsay. No, this isn't a question for you, but my general
Sure.
comment is, this goes to a point that I know we discussed it in the cow, and hopefully as a board, we continue discussing it. Let's not get excited about $4 million more dollars. We just heard tonight, all right, it was $3.7 million. Because there was $300,000 that we planned on that didn't come in. And I'm sure there's a bunch more similar to this. It's just a comment.
On the phone, Dr. Diller, did you have any questions? Okay, might be on mute. We'll go to Mr. Leonard's.
I have no questions. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, any other questions here? All right, so Mr. Woodman had shared with me the answer to the question, how many of the quarter, so you said roughly a quarter of the students are not English first language. And of that, 25%, not of the 25%, the total number of Spanish-speaking students, Spanish as the first language, is 2,294. So almost like 90% of the 80% of that quarter, or roughly, 20%, 22% of the total population. It's big.
I think Future Ready has it at 23.5. It's one of the data sources I think you'd use for the data dive.
So just to follow up with Mr. Norcross's questions on this one, did the overall pot of money, like in the Title I, was the overall pot reduced at the federal government? Or does just, I mean, like you put in the grants request like you normally do, and they just didn't fund it as much?
I don't know how much of that has to factor in with I was just talking to Bobby before we started. I don't know how much of this would have to do with the fact that numbers across the state might be a little skewed, and that we've been doing free and reduced lunches for everybody for the last 2 years. I don't know if now that would change things. Like I said, when our state folks were talking to us, I was pretty convinced that we were gonna, I can remember texting Kurt from the conference and saying, well, it's not gonna look good here, but I think it's gonna get better here. I was really surprised that this happened.
So clarify for me,
Sure.
the state part, but these are federal monies that goes through the state?
Yeah. Yes.
And so the state's just like a pass-through. And I guess where I'm just stuck a little bit, and I was hoping so if anybody knows, correct any misunderstanding or misstatement here. The federal government just passed like $1 trillion stuff, and we get stiffed out of $300,000.
Sure.
I mean, I'm like, seriously? We're talking about education here, yet we're seeing the federal government's able to fund everything else, but yet they're skimping back on funding the schools. So, if that is incorrect, please somebody correct me.
Sounds like it's terribly pragmatic to me, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? That was awesome. So thank you. I think you hit the sweet spot. You're like, thanks, Liz. Not too much, not too little. It's just right. Thank you. All right, section 6 on the agenda. We have a motion to approve first, are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody wishes to have pulled for separate discussion?
6.28, please.
Okay, and just to make sure, that's the new stipend positions?
Yes.
Okay, so for Dr. Diller and Mr. Leonard, 628 will be pulled for separate discussion. Any others?
Thank you.
Okay, hearing no other items, I may have a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed, except for 628.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Mr. Leonards,
Yes.
Mr. McKee,
Yes.
Mr. Norcross,
Yes.
Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Dr. Schur.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve 6.28, the new stipend positions?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Scogler. Thank you, Dr. Diller. All right, discussion. Mr. Norcross?
Yeah, just discussion / question. I know we discussed this at the Cal meeting as well. But after that, I had another thought. I just wanted to vet it out here tonight. First off, let me start, I support this. I'm coming in here planning to support it unless you all surprise me here with my question. So the basis for these stipends is with, some restructuring of duties within the administration building. So with approving this, we are taking the path that we are not going to bring that position back. My concern is that we would approve stipends and then 6 months, 7 months, maybe even a year down the road, we decide, we want to bring that position back. Now we've paid out stipends to cover some duties, plus we've then refilled the position, and we've doubled up a little bit. So, that's a question, that we have eliminated the position, and we do not tend to fill that position or duties, no or about it.
I think there are 2 positions that these stipends are partially covering.
Yeah, they cover 3 positions, but it's because those duties were being performed with staff that is no longer in the admin building. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like on the personnel report, there's 2 positions being eliminated. That's partially what this is intended to cover. So, and then I know Kurt had already hinted in the acting superintendent's report about a social services director, and I'd imagine that that's part of the equation as well.
So, part of the personnel report, we have the elimination of the clinical services supervisor and the social emotional education services supervisor positions. And I did say during my board report that there are a lot of duties that we are having, difficulty, covering with our administration. And we would like to present a social services director combining a lot of those duties that were within those 2 positions, but still with the need for, so there is a considerable net savings. Tammy would have to fill us in on that. We would still want the head counselor and head nurse. Tina can talk a little bit more about their job descriptions. But at the September Cal, we would be looking at, a social services director. Here's some of the highlights. Oversight of the case process, those students in the case programs from K to 12, that we're following a systematic, approach in students that would be in those classrooms. Supervisor of social workers, a homeless coordinator, and our Children's Aid Society staff that we have working. Transition from residential treatment facilities and foster care. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with our county systems. Mental health services, liaison K to 12 to agency services. I think it should be pointed out, since we discussed eliminating these two positions, there's been two bills that have been passed. Act 55 by our state of Pennsylvania that is a big piece of that is social emotional concerns, with our students and mental health, basically. And the other half of Act 55 is safety. Then we know we're going to be getting some money from we were just talking about the federal government losing some money, but there was basically a gun bill from the post-Uvalde school shooting, that there's a gun bill that is a very substantial bill that's going to be supporting safety and mental health in our schools as well. So we don't know what the allocation is there. We haven't even heard anything about that yet. I think it's being developed, but there's going to be probably more mandates and things that we need to provide that they're going to be supporting that we'll want to push that way. Risk assessment and suicide prevention and family coordination with that. The SEL curriculum and development and implementation. As you know, we've been working on the trauma informed policy. Part of that is that we have to have a trauma informed plan. That would fall right under the social services type of work, director type of work. Also working I think the head nurse can probably work with the Keystone Clinic at Caches, but there is some supervisory that needs to happen. And then of course, safe to say, co-leader with our police chief and health and safety plan coordinator. So there's just some of the things that I was going to be putting in the board report this week to support the social services director position. But in the end, we'd be eliminating two Act 93 positions into one, but with a head nurse and a head counselor.
I have a question, if the timing's right.
Go ahead.
Instead of another central office position, I sometimes think we need to consider getting counselors, people that are closer to the students that can work directly with them. I think we need to see if we have the amount of counselors that we need and that are needed to work directly with kids versus another central office position. Just my thoughts.
Okay, that's appropriate for the COW, right? Discussion? Okay.
Correct.
Well, I was going to say we're applying for
Okay, go ahead.
through the Act 55, we are applying for a grant. It's due by the end of the month, and Bobby Stein is helping us apply for that. That would provide mental health counselors for our students. It was part of the discussion that we had at our last CNIT meeting, but it looks like that at least for 2 years, we do feel that the Act 55 money looks like it will be reoccurring money, and we hope that it will be, but at least for 2 years, we can bring a couple more mental health counselors to support our students throughout the district. So we are applying, just want to let the public and the board know that we are applying for a grant there as part of the money that's allocated to Chambersburg. Bobby, do you know the amount that that can be towards safety and the amount towards mental health?
The answer was 480-some thousand total, about 240 for each of those. Okay,
Are those competitive grants?
No. Dr. Dooley, any other questions?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
So, yeah, if I could just.
Mr. Norcross?
That was a lot, Mr. Whitman. So, this is difficult in public session, but the duties for the stipend positions that are on that are on this, eventually on the personnel report then also. We are going to provide a stipend because those responsibilities were being performed by a central admin individual. So I understand there are some functions that position, some duties that position did that we are backfilling with these stipends. But then if we also start adding positions back, at the end of the day, we're back to Dr. Diller's point, to central admin positions. And one of the primary driver in the discussions was, and we heard it here again this evening from Mrs. Breslin, was, when we were going through the budget discussions about, well, we can't fill 14 teachers' positions. So we were looking for more boots on the ground versus central admin positions. So I'm just curious, concerned. I support the stipends, but now the money we intended to save to put teachers in the classroom, we're going to just turn around and spend even more now by creating more central admin positions plus stipends.
We're eliminating 2 central admin positions, clinical services supervisor and social emotional education services supervisor, and we're creating 1, and then we're taking a portion of those responsibilities because we're going from 2 to 1, hopefully. Because we're taking 2 jobs and condensing it into 1, that leaves a lot on one person's plate, and that's why we have the stipends for these 2 roles. So it's still substantial net savings. If savings is what you're after, we are hitting that.
Am I correct in that it's not just the added duties, but I would imagine that with that also comes, I guess, extra hours to perform the duties? Because if you're already full at, a 30-hour work week and now you have more, then something has to give, either more time or things don't get done that were previously being done. Would that be correct?
Right, and I would say through the last few acts that have been passed, with the SEL coordination and, like our, I'll speak a little bit about the head stipend positions. Is that okay? So our head counselor would be, doing SEL coordination and lessons with the counselors. They'll be supporting the elementary counselors and the secondary counselors. There also is a comp plan that they can run as well. Liaisons with a lot of the county's point of contact on counseling, and our head nurse would be responsible for the health reporting, the SHARS report. Already looking at a vaccination clinic. Our students have to get certain vaccinations by certain grades, or else they're not allowed in school. So the coordination of that is grand. All the supplies and everything that our nurses would need during the year would be working on that. So that would be some of the and anything new that would come down. Last year would have been a massive amount of work with COVID, but with protocols coming from the PA Department of Health or from the PDE. And Tina, I don't know if you have any more you want to add about those 2 stipend positions.
So we do have draft job descriptions for the stipend positions. Mr. Widman had reviewed several of the essential functions of each of the stipend positions. Those are going to be presented at the COW September 13th.
Can I make a comment?
I'm going to move off this real quick and then just ask for some information when we have the cow. I was so hopeful, Tina. I thought you were about ready to say you had an org chart that was going to show before and after. But I'd love to see that at the cow.
I'm working on that, Mr. Norcross.
I am a visual learner, so maybe it'll make more sense when I see it on paper.
Okay, Dr. Diller, you had a question?
Yes, I had a question. And maybe this is just creative accounting. I don't know, but my understanding is the money that was saved from the one initial position that we had eliminated, then paid for a director of special ed. Would that be accurate or is that not correct?
Dr. Diller, this is Mrs. Clever, and that is not correct.
Okay, so those monies that were saved by the elimination of that position weren't turned over to the special ed position. I guess that's a Mrs. Stauffer question, money-wise.
Yes, Dr. Diller, this is Tammy. The special ed supervisor position that was added earlier this past year was an add to the 22-23 budget. That occurred prior to the elimination of, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to get the title right. Mr. Whitman, I don't know the title of the position. So that occurred afterwards. But we did reduce the budget by that position because it was eliminated.
Okay, thank you.
If that answers your question, I'm not sure if it does, but it was an add and then a reduction, but they were kind of two separate things that were occurring.
Two separate things, but even out in the finances somewhat.
Yeah, it would. It would have evened out. You're correct.
Any other questions or discussion?
Thank you.
Dr. Diller, did you have more?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We have a motion for 7.01 for approving the additional online courses.
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, discussion, questions? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And we have a motion for 8.01, which is the agreement between Hoffman Homes Academy and CSD for Educational Services. Any motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So you get extra credit if you motion or second. You get extra credit if you motion or second. So, you know, you get a gold star. Any discussion or questions about 801?
Just one quick comment, Mr. President, just for the
Yep.
public. I will abstain from this vote due to a family member who serves on that board.
Thank you. Okay. Hearing no other questions or comments, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norcross?
Abstain?
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
And Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Motion passes 6 with 1 abstaining.
Okay, may I have a motion for 8.02, which is the approval for First Start Partnership for children and families? Go on. Do I have to throw in a scratch and sniff sticker too? Anyone?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
All right, now, Mr. Woodman, these are a few items that were added after the CAL just because of timing, correct? If you
Yes.
say a few comments.
This is just like when Mrs. Breslin was talking about the state does a pass-through for the title monies. We apply for the grant, the state passes it through to us. This is for basically our pre-K. This is a grant that comes through us, that passes through us, that goes to the First Start Partnerships for Children and Families Agreement. And we've been doing this for multiple years, and it's just a pass-through.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard's?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
And Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We have a motion for the approval of Nucelia agreement.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions about this, or Mr. Woodman, if you do, or someone?
Yes, this is a software that our teachers use when we looked at when Doug Schatzer and Jonathan Michael and Christine Walkabuth went through usage. It's one of our highest used softwares that our teachers use in the classroom. And I can actually say that for the next thing we're looking at as well, Nearpod. So it's one of the things that are very high in usage. And this one would be funded through the Curriculum Instruction Department.
And this would be just like lesson augmentation
Right.
material?
Yes, and hopefully, as we are going through refreshes in our resources, we have a lot of teachers that use a lot of science and social studies content. We have not replaced our resources in science and social studies for many years. We are looking at, as I presented when I did the ELA resources, we are going to be starting math 9 through 12 refresh and looking at science for next year. And then the following year would be social studies. Our teachers have asked, don't refresh every resource because it's a lot to learn. Do 1 year at a time. But we will be taking a look at science, and hopefully as we refresh our resources and it gives more digital content to our teachers, with our resources being so old in science and social studies right now, over 20 years old, they have to hunt and peck to find a lot of resources that they use in our classrooms. So News ELA and the next thing we're looking at, Nearpod, help our teachers out quite a bit.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard's?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Scher?
Yes,
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you. 8.04, may I have a motion for Nearpod?
Move
So-
to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions on this? I mean, Mr. Woodman just talked to it a little bit, but any other questions?
This one, I would say, is coming.
Oh, go ahead.
This one's coming out of our title funding.
Okay, hearing no questions or comments, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard's?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. You have a motion to approve the NWEA quote for MAPS testing.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Any questions, discussion on this? Or Mr. Woodman, if you'd give a little overview, since this was added after the cow.
Okay, 2 meetings ago, I gave a presentation on our data. This is one of our biggest pieces of data that our teachers use K-8. We look at our growth of our students. We give the MAP exams in math and reading 3 times a year. It's one of the first things that the students will do when they arrive to school here in the fall. Just after Christmas is the next window, and then the final window is just in May to see how our students performed and to see whether they met a year's worth of growth. But it's also, our teachers use it as a diagnostic to see what the kids are ready to learn.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Woodman? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Leonard's?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 9.01, may I have a motion to approve the preparation of specifications, advertisements, and submittals of the PDE forms for the renovations to Thaddeus Stevens Elementary School for the HVAC and energy savings project.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions?
On the document, I guess, is anyone from Crabtree with us this evening or not?
No.
No. Shucks. So in a document Crabtree put together, the attachment on the packet, the bid amounts, we had anticipated a $618,000 savings. But then as you scroll down 3/4 of the way down the page, that 618,000 was then whittled down to 353,000 in savings. Does that mean that the cumulative total of those projects actually came in, whatever that difference is between 618,000 and 353,000, that was additional over and above the bid? Is that what happened to that original presumed savings?
We had some issues, Mr. Norcross, with the flooring after they did the asbestos abatement, and they had to come in and level the concrete. So there was some additional cost on that.
Is that all one school? Was that one building or more?
No, that was all the buildings.
Okay.
They shot. I guess they used shot on the floors, and it kind of didn't turn out too well. So they had to re-level them.
Who decided to use the shot? The contractor?
That's just what they do. It's just, and with the age of the buildings, it's not uncommon.
So it sounds like maybe that should have been factored in on the front end as a strong possibility.
Well, that's why you have the contingency to begin with.
Sure.
For the unknown. It's something that was unknown. So.
Yeah. That seems fair.
But there already was a contingency. So that went, we ate up all the contingency plus another 300,000?
No. That just came out of part of the contingency. As far as those figures, I don't know.
Yeah. So the punchline is we're $500,000 over where we thought we would be originally.
I can't see that, and I know that's saying that, but I'm not sure why it's saying that. I can't answer that. Jeff would have to be the one to answer that.
We're up 2.6%.
498,000. I'm sorry, I said $500,000.
It's same difference to me.
Would that have an impact on what we plan to do for Stevens or just in general? Because this motion is just to put it out for
it's sunk cost.
bid, right?
It's sunk cost at this point, and maybe we don't have to talk about it here, but yeah.
Okay, so we'll
I think maybe in a on a macro level, it's a good example of we have to continue to track these. We come up with budgets and things change, right? Gas, okay, things change, but we need to track them.
I can tell you in these projects, it's been a whirlwind because
I know.
things were changing every day, every hour, and it's been a tough summer. I mean, it's hard getting materials. It's been a nightmare.
So this will go to my so we thought we had $4 million more dollars a month ago. Mrs. Breslin's presentation tonight, now it sounds like we had 3.7 million. Take $500,000 out of this, now we have 3.2 million. So it At the end of the day, it all goes to the same bottom line.
Mr. Norcross, if I may, looking at this spreadsheet that Mr. Straub put together, this analysis does include the projection with the original budget for Stevens that was done back in January of 2022, and then the reforecasted. So if we're referring to the $489,000 some odd dollars that he's indicated down below, that's taking into account the difference in the budgets between the January budget of Stevens and the reforecasted budget that he just did. That building project estimate, if I recall, and it's on here, is an increase of $852,000. If that helps clarify what this sheet was, I think that was the original ask.
No, the original ask was the 500,000. When you roll all the projects together, when we kicked this off back in 2021, the bottom line is what the ask was. All right? And I'm not faulting anyone, I'm not blaming anyone, but keep in mind, we've made a decision to do projects, and now it's 500,000 over budget. That
What?
500,000 comes from somewhere.
Well, I think what it is, because Marion, excuse me, not Marion, but Stevens, and wasn't included in that. It was included, well, let me rephrase, it was included, but since then, it's went up 20%.
Yeah, I see the number there.
And
but-
I think that's what, like Tammy's saying, that's what adjusted the overall.
I think this highlights the importance of building a contingency into your budget. I also think, given the way costs are right now, I'm thoroughly impressed that we're only 2.6% over when it's all said and done, when you see what's happening across the economy.
And I think to simplify, if you take Marion out of the equation, you're still under.
Stevens.
Does that make sense?
Steve, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. I still don't like overspending. But when you consider everything that's going on right now, this is rather impressive.
All right, so any other discussion on the approval to begin for the solicitation of bids, paperwork for that? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKee,
Yes.
Mr. Norcross,
Yes.
Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Dr. Schur,
Yes.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
and Mr. Leonards.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 9.02, may I have a motion to approve the dissolving the payment reimbursement agreement between CSD and the Gridiron?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norcross? Yes. Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Dr. Schur,
Yes.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Mr. Leonards,
Yes.
and Mr. McKee.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And a motion to approve the personnel actions as presented for 10.01 on the agenda.
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion?
I won't prolong this tonight, but I'll just highlight we're eliminating 2 positions. I would see great value in the position that Kurt is proposing, Kurt and the administration of a social services director. So I'll vote yes for the personnel report, but those 2 positions concern me if we don't do something about that. I'll also mention we had members of the public asking about the stipends and who they're for. They are listed on the personnel report, so anybody is welcome to check that out.
Thank you for that call out. Any other questions, comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Dr. Schur,
Yes?
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Mr. Leonards,
Yes.
Mr. McKee,
Yes.
Mr. Norcross. Yes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 10.02, may I have a motion to approve the additional compensation for Mr. Whitman in his acting superintendent role?
Move to approve.
Thank you. And a
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Scher?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Mr. Leonards?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
And, Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, everyone. All right, committee reports. Let's start on the phone just so that, because that tends to work better. Dr. Diller, anything to report?
Just to thank Lindsay Breslin for coming in and doing that excellent report for us tonight.
Agree. All right, thank you. Mr. Leonards.
Nothing to report since our last committee meeting back on the 6th of July. We will be scheduling a finance committee meeting prior to the next CAL, a date to be determined. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Mr. McKee, since you're down there by yourself.
None.
Okay. Mr. Raber.
No reports.
All right. Mrs. Gogler.
No.
All right. Mr. Norcross.
Career Tech meeting will be next week. No, this week.
Next week.
All right. And I'll just mention we had a policy committee meeting. We have, I think several that we had worked through, and they will be brought to Cal, to the next Cal. Might even be a few more because we're going to have another policy committee meeting before the next Cal. So hopefully we'll get a couple teed up for that, for our discussion. And the other thing I'll mention is that last meeting I had to step out at the very beginning. You might remember Dr. Diller stepped in. That was for to participate in an LIU vote. The LIU had recognized that they have had significant challenges with staffing, and had made the decision to change some of their salaries in an effort to retain. They had looked at and saw competitively that their entry-level positions were I think mostly entry, and several others were considerably lower, and they saw that they were losing a lot of staff to neighboring districts. So that was an action that the LIU had taken and passed, which could have, I forget the specific dollar amount, but it would have a budget impact to us here at CSD. All right, that's mine. Yes, and Ms. Lynch, thank you for the reminder.
Thank you, sir. Very excited to share that we have, within the last week, we have accepted more than $12,000 in school supplies for our students here in Chambersburg. We have about 80% of those divided and distributed. So that's pretty excited to have those things ready for our students who may be coming back to school without supplies. And it's also taking a burden from some of our teachers who may otherwise need to be providing those from either their classroom budgets or certainly their own pockets. As Mr. Woodman mentioned, last Thursday we had our annual summit for our Foundation Board of Directors, and we had an outstanding speaker who came in and spoke to us about recruiting volunteers and how we can be high-impact volunteers working with students, and not just in classrooms, but also throughout the community. So I think we're going to see an influx of volunteers coming into the district, because I've had 3 board members call and say, tell us again how our friends can volunteer at the district. So that was a good outreach. We really had a good experience. We also have 2 new grant opportunities that Tammy has shared with us that we started working on last week, and another one will be starting tomorrow. And it's a great time of year. We're pretty excited about being included in the in-service and just getting the word out about being able to provide things to students K through 12, but not just with teacher grants, but also with scholarships. And we also love the special projects and other grants. So thank you all for your support very much, and we're excited for kicking off the year.
Awesome. Thank you for your support and the entire foundation.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was rather rude. I do have a Wilson College intern is with us for the first time tonight. This is Naija Glover, and I'm very pleased to introduce her because she came to the foundation from Wilson College to do her internship, but she picked the district because she is a Chambersburg alum, and she was out at CMS, and she was also in the marketing program out at Career Tech. So she's really excited to continue that in her college experience, and she's already, she hasn't even officially started yet, and this is her second time in less than a week, so we're excited to have her. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to 12.01, members of the audience invited to comment on non-agenda items. And we'll start with Gail Schuyler, 2452 Hafer Road. And I know I messed your name up last time 2 weeks ago. I apologize. I can relate.
This is a difficult conversation that I want to have with you. I'd like to preface this talk by saying that we live in a world that thinks believing in ultimate truth is intolerant. Today's culture has drifted from believing absolute truth over the last 60 plus years. If you'll recall, in the 50s and 60s, the phrase was, "I'm okay, you're okay, if it feels good, do it." Then came situational ethics in the 70s and 80s, and now we're living in an era whereby people say that what you believe is fine for you, but everyone has their own standard of right and wrong. Truth is no longer absolute. There is no black and white. It is whatever you perceive it to be. I don't want this to be a conversation about religion, but I don't like to call myself a Christian because everyone says they're a Christian. I learned that when I came to Franklin County. I was appalled because everyone said they were a Christian. However, their lives and their speech did not emulate what I knew as Christianity. In fact, there's a study that 54% of people that call themselves Christian do not believe in the absolute truth, God's truth, and God's word is truth. I believe that parents must own the responsibility of teaching their children about truth and to not rely on academia, school systems, media, and the political arenas to teach truth. The lines of truth may be blurred at times, but truth will always prevail. And really, actually, everyone does believe in some sort of absolute truth. For example, are you okay with your child being bullied? Are you okay with someone having an affair with your spouse? Are you okay with, you fill in the blank? And then my question would be, why not? Because your response is based on truth. Which brings me to what I came here to say. I recently became made aware of the PA Department of Ed's website on gender identity, and creating gender-inclusive schools and classrooms. This is on the state site. There's a plethora of information, which I have read, from gender diversity words that every educator should know, articles, publications, reports, gender journeys, the language of gender, a toolkit for gender spectrum, and more. On the surface, this seems all well and good. However, upon further investigation, reading through the words you should know as an educator, I came across a definition of binary gender. On the PDE site, it states that binary gender is the faulty concept that there are only two genders, male and female. Did you hear that? If you believe that there are only two genders, then your thinking, according to PDE, is faulty. Is that what we want our teachers to be teaching? Is that what you desire for your children to be taught? According to God's truth, He created male and female, and that is the truth. The PDE website also includes a toolkit for teachers to create a gender-neutral day, tutorials on preferred gender-neutral personal pronouns such as me, thee, z, or it, lesson plans on gender identity, and more. I'm a follower of Christ. I'm a sinner saved by grace. I am not perfect. I sin. I must ask for forgiveness. As a follower of Christ, Christ commands me to love all people and to not discriminate against people based on race, ethnicity, beliefs, political affiliations, educational background, what NFL team they prefer, what school they attended, what religion they have, what residency they live in, or gender. I am commanded to love, but not to agree with. As a former educator, I could not teach the concepts that are currently purported on the PDE website on gender identity. You ask why some teachers may be leaving the profession. This could be one very reason. Teaching gender identity and being gender inclusive. It's a slippery slope, and you all must be aware of it, and I urge you to dig deep into PDE's website. I'm speaking the truth in love. I recognize that tolerance is the highest ideal, and standing for the truth in public can get me slammed. However, as a follower of Christ, I stand with Christ. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ because it's the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. Truth is tough. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Valerie Jordan from 6812 Redden Lane.
Tonight, the dollar amount of $318,019 was mentioned, minus. We have a $177 million budget. I think we can find the money. Line item transfer. 3 teachers in a general fund is nothing in a $770 million budget. Volunteering. I'd like to volunteer, but on your website, it says 1 volunteer district-wide. I'm going to speak with you later on because I'd like to volunteer in one of the schools, but I want to target a school. I don't want to have to go district-wide. It's not fair. And I have 2 neighbors of mine that asked many years ago to volunteer here, 2 teachers, and they were turned away. It's time to open these schools to volunteers. My husband and I volunteer, and we've always volunteered, and I'd like to be with kids. I love kids. And personally, they love me because I have fun with them. The 3 finalists for the superintendent should be introduced to the public. That needs to happen when you do discuss in, I guess, March. Now, Mr. Norcross left, and I'll talk to him after the meeting, but everything needs to be discussed here under full disclosure. And the more you talk about it, the better off you're going to be. If you're having trouble with your construction projects, find some money and hire a project construction manager, especially when you're talking millions and millions of dollars. I did that back in the mid-90s. We did it so that it freed up the superintendent and it freed up the janitors. How much could that be? Stephen should have classrooms added to it. In fact, a number of the schools need classrooms added to them. Again, my school tax hardly went up. And tonight, when I go home, you're going to see a property across the street, like I told you, which is going up, and that's going to add another $5,000 or $6,000 into your coffers next year. So I think that's it. I guess the new stipend. Oh, I don't like seeing heads of anything. I wish you would take on the model of Greencastle, which is assistant principals. Having an a head principal, that could lead into some issues here. Okay, I don't know when a principal leaves and the head teacher, if that teacher is going into that office and then a substitute comes in, I don't know how that's dealt with. But you really should have assistant principals in all your schools. And your teachers be in the classrooms. Again, $177 million budget. Try to certify some of these people. Encourage them to go for these certifications, okay? And maybe your morale issue will become, hey, I'm able to become an assistant principal here. I'm just want you to think about this, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And John Jordan.
Okay, I'll finish what I was talking to before about the morale issues. I had a couple more things I wanted to just mention. One of the things is, in talking to some of the teachers and different people in the lower elementary schools, we have a lot of classrooms that have over 20 kids in them, and I know that, and you guys know that. I'm concerned that maybe we don't have enough support staff for those teachers, so they end up being overwhelmed when they have that many children in a classroom. The other thing is, I know we have a lot of really talented people working for this district. When we have new positions to go into the administrative part of the thing, are we considering our people first? Because I see that there's been some new positions added where I'll use the word poached people from different districts, local districts like Waynesboro and Shippensburg and different places like that. Were those people really the best people to bring in versus somebody we had in our district? I'm assuming those jobs were posted, and we ended up grabbing somebody from another district. That always creates a morale issue because the people in the district a lot of times feel that they may have been slighted or they may have been overlooked. So I don't know whether these people are somebody's friends or they were the best person, but I'm not sure that. I guess we should consider our people, with all the talented people we have, first, rather than grab somebody or poach somebody from another district. One of my other concerns is, when I've been attending these different meetings, I hear board members say things like, we should be closing, I can't remember the name of the school.
Grandview.
Grandview. And other teachers saying, well, I went to the school and did this or do that. I think that, and these were board members, so board members, I think, should be going to Mr. Woodman if they have issues as individuals, or talk to the whole board and have a committee and then deal with it that way, rather than putting their own views out to the public or to anybody else, because I'm not sure that's the board's job. I think the board is a governing thing, and they should be doing it as a group or a committee of the board when it comes to that. And let's see. My last question, I guess, is the job descriptions that we're working on now, new job descriptions, or we've been hiring people for years and years. Don't we already have job descriptions for them, or are they new? I hear a lot of talk the last two meetings about a young lady over here writing job descriptions. And I guess my thought is it new, or are we just wasting time redoing everything? Or is it absolutely necessary because we haven't addressed it in the past? And I think that's basically all I have on my couple of little notes here. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else that didn't make the sign-on sheet that wanted to say anything? Okay, and I'll announce that we just have an executive session here afterwards on personnel matters. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.